Hello out there, and welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Frazier. Got a really cool, interesting guest on tonight. Her name's Arwen Careaga. Yes, you recognize the last name. Her other half, let's say, has been on the show various times and is sort of a regular guest on here and quite often. But she's joining me on the show tonight because she actually is a practitioner and participates in an art that I'm kind of really interested in and I don't know anything about. So I thought this would be a really cool conversation to have with her, among other things. So she's joining me on the line. How are you doing tonight there, Arwen?
Hi, Matt. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm living the dream. This is kind of, I mean, I get to do this for fun, you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
To kind of round this out, so you are the owner and a practitioner at Blue Lotus Health and Acupuncture, right? And
yes.
So you guys do this, you perform acupuncture on people. And I mean, so that just brings to me like a flood of questions, namely because I don't know anything about it other than things that I've seen in stuff like movies or on maybe some documentaries and these sorts of places. But so I want to kind of just have a conversation with you about what that experience is. And then I'd also kind of like to figure out what makes a person get into doing this too, as well, or at least from your standpoint. So let's start at the top. And let's say I walk in to your establishment there. And I want to get me some acupuncture, all right? And so I know this involves needles and sticking them in places, but that's about all I understand about it. So what is the purpose of this, and what where does it? I want to also understand sort of the nexus of where this comes from, if you could, or as much as you can, about where this sort of form of therapy actually originates.
We practice traditional Chinese medicine. There are other styles. There's Korean acupuncture and Japanese style acupuncture and other cultures who practice it. But what we practice is traditional Chinese medicine. So that's the acupuncture as well as herbs and Qigong. Ramon teaches the Qigong and Tai Chi classes as well. And then there's some like nutritional aspects. It's a different way of thinking about food to take care of your body. It's less focused on specific nutrients and vitamins and more about what is easy for your body to break down and use for energy. So it's kind of a lot. Most people come to us for pain relief in the beginning. So I think probably maybe it's a tie between like back pain and neck pain. People will come because either they've tried everything else and they're still in pain, or they've tried everything except for surgery and they would really rather not do that if they can help it. So that's usually what gets people in the door. And then when they're having their treatment, they ask questions and we talk about it. And also when you do acupuncture for someone, you're interested in not only why are you here at this moment, but also how can this medicine be used to help you have a long life and a life that's kind of worth living, so that you have this vitality to carry you forth into your later years. Yes.
Okay.
And health and energy and all that kind of stuff. So I think I may have forgotten one of your questions.
No, I'm just, I'm saying the origin and why. So I walk in the door, right? You're looking at me, I'm coming in and I'm saying, hey, I'm interested in this. What can this do for me? Was sort of how I framed that for you.
Yeah.
So it's a big question, I know.
When we first get started, some people like to talk about the needles and some people don't. The word needle itself is kind of a problem because it draws up, memories of like vaccinations as a child, and you're just terrified and hiding under the table. At least I was trying not to be found. So
yeah, right.
That's kind of a problem that scares people sometimes. So I try not to say the word needle at them if they look like they might be nervous about it.
Okay.
So we use stainless steel. They're very thin. I wish I could show you right now. They're I call them glorified hairs because they're very thin needles is what they are, but they're mostly packaging. So they're the very thin needle point, and then it has like a wound the seal up around it to make a handle. And then sometimes they have guide tubes, and sometimes they're all different lengths because you have different parts of the body. Like if you're needling into the glute for like sciatic pain, you need usually for most people a longer needle to get down to the level that you have to work on to get to that pain. You don't just want to needle the top surface of the skin. Whereas like for the hand, where it's not, like a huge muscle, you would just use a 1 inch or something to get where you need to go. And we look at, why are you here? And also we look at the tongue and we take your pulse and we ask a bunch of questions that kind of makes people uncomfortable because it's about bowel movements and stuff like that we're not used to talking about. But it's important because it lets us know how well your body is
functioning.
Working.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. And then once we've kind of decided, what's the focus of this treatment going to be, then you just you lay down. It's like a massage table is what we use with sheets on it and pillows. So you just lay down and then we put the needles in. And then you just rest there for a little while. And how long you would stay there depends on each person, what we're doing with the needles, and also the state of your own chi or energy. So like how soon it seems like you're going to respond. Sometimes we'll come in and out and check the pulse to see how it feels in between, if we're not sure when it's time to get up or not. I would say most people that I see between 20 and 30 minutes, they're just laying there breathing while the needles do their work. And the work of the needles is to help the body remember how to function, because sometimes, especially here, and by here I mean the United States, so and probably other parts of the world, but we drive in our cars, we talk on our phones, everything on the phone with the neck bent over, and then we're all stressed out and we forget to breathe. So we get all tight and wound up, and it's hard to remember that there was another way before, not just for you yourself, but as a human. Humans haven't always been so nervous and stressed out and having insomnia and all this stuff as much as we do now. So,
not since we were chased by things like saber-toothed tigers and stuff. It's been a while.
Harrowing adventures.
Right.
It's been a while. And it's so the learning of acupuncture, there's more than 360 different points on the body. So you have to learn where are they, first of all. And what's underneath. So you learn a lot of anatomy, so that you can safely needle, because you don't want to puncture anything that should not be punctured. And then you learn how far to insert the needle and what to do with it. If you want to increase something or decrease something, like if somebody has a lot of heat, you would want to decrease the energy of that particular point that you're using, because you're trying to drain it, not strengthen it. So it's a lot of education for where the points are, what do they do, you have to learn what they're all for, and then you learn how to make almost like a recipe that helps you address whatever is in front of you. So it's not only like, oh gosh, you have back pain, so we're only going to just stick these needles right here in your back and hope for the best. But it's also like, what is underlying? Why did this happen in the first place? Sometimes it's clear, there was something, a box fell on me, or I fell down the stairs. So that's one thing, right? That's an exact incident. But sometimes people come in, they're like, well, it just started on slow and nothing really happened. So there's a weakness that allows things to happen. And so we try to figure out where, we call it a deficiency, where the deficiency is, and also shore that up at the same time that we're working on the chief complaint.
Right. So it's a very whole body kind of approach to the process of wellness, for lack of a better word, right? I mean, that's kind of how it all fits together. Now,
yes, it is.
I'm mesmerized by this because I think about, and just follow me here, I apologize. Okay, so I think about, at some point in time, somewhere in the world, there was somebody looking across the room at their buddy who was complaining about their shoulder bugging them. And they're sitting there and they pick up a bone and they look at him and go, you know what? I got an idea. Like,
I know.
Okay, so that's probably very, I don't know, elementary in consideration for this. But how do you think that this comes about? Because this is the thing, right? People get and I hear this constantly. People get this treatment and get tremendous amounts of relief from it for all kinds of different types of ailments, right? So, but how does it come about where, in your mind, where you're sitting there looking at your buddy and you're thinking, I got a really sharp bone here and I bet I can fix that. Or is it, I'm so sick of this, I'm going to go, how does that come together?
That's a good question. And maybe they taught us this in school. I had I was pregnant for 2 children during the time I was in acupuncture school. So maybe that's just one of the things I discarded because I had to take tests on other things. But I will tell you, I've always wondered like the same thing, like who gets this idea? But I forgot his name, but there's a man, they call him like, he tasted herbs and they say he had a glass stomach. And with the idea, like he could taste them and know what they were for. And so it may be that there were just people who did some kind of meditation or some kind of monks, and they were very in tune with things. And so one thing leads to another. You get this idea that, because like people today, even they'll come in and they'll be like, I'm so stressed out. I've just been pressing right here, right between their eyebrows. So people do this instinctively. But it turns out that's a point called yin tong, and its job is to calm the shin, to calm the spirit, to help you calm down. But they don't know that. They've not like gone online. It's just like, and I find myself doing it. Like at stressful moments, I'll just like do this right away. And I'm thinking, I feel like that was not acupuncture training so much as it was just like desperation.
Or like
just
some
trying
sort
to
of
help things feel better.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess, okay, so to be elementary again about it, all animals have ways of soothing themselves and each other that involve at least physical touch, right? We see this, you see it in the nurturing actions of parent, female that have cubs and this kind of thing. So it's not, so there's something baked in, right, at that level that's sort of part of this, and that, okay, so I accept that. I mean, obviously it works, all right, because like I said, tons of people get relief from it. But it's that whole point, like someone decided to sit down and pay attention to this type of thing and then start quantifying it and recording it somehow.
Right.
That's
so it could be repeated and used,
Yeah, so that's probably more likely how it happened. It wasn't, Ugg jamming a bone in his buddy, but you kind of get that. Like it's and then a lot of this also depends on, like you said, okay, so there's a period of time in human history where piercing skin probably wasn't a terribly good idea, period, because they didn't have antibiotics or whatever. There were things that would have made. So even at that, and then having tools that were small enough. I mean, we probably take it for granted today because of modern manufacturing techniques, right? How thin you can make like a filament level of wire, right?
But right.
I'm guessing that this was practiced before those type of tools were available, right?
Oh, you should see. There's what they call them, like the 10 classic needles. It's like stone, and it looks like tiny torture weapons, like literally like little tiny spears, because they've been made. Like somebody had to like chisel this out and make it so it's not small. They're like these. They're scary. I personally, I would like to have a set to like look at and be like, oh my goodness, but I would never show that to patients coming in, because you just see those and you're like, what am I even doing in this place? That's looking crazy.
That just brings us to mind a silly anecdote, but there's this cat on, not a cat like Meow. I say this all the time. I'm sorry. There's this person that I see on YouTube all the time. He's this chiropractor, and he uses like chisels and sledgehammers. And he does work on like MMA fighters, professional football players, power lifters, wrestlers, like really heavy duty mason workers, where they get where he can't do normal stuff to them, so he reverts to like these kind of caveman age tools to facilitate. And I wonder, however, given like you're talking about these tools themselves, and we're talking about them sort of in an archaic sense, but I wonder if there's a benefit to them over what you guys use today. Like there's a benefit that this guy has found for needing these sort of more rudimentary tools to actually help certain types of people.
Yeah, I'd say for some people it would be, especially because the people that he's dealing with are probably what we would call like an excess type. They've got a lot of energy naturally. They've got a lot of muscle mass.
Oh, good Lord, yes.
I mean, they have to be. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this. Like,
right.
I, for example, I've got as much energy as I need. I don't have any extra to go like fight anybody or,
Right.
So it doesn't occur to me to do that. So the people that he's using it on by nature, like that entire group of people, would probably be excess. And so that more hardcore, like they would probably need deeper needling, thicker gauge, more manipulation, just to release some of that excess. So it makes sense that, a group of people would benefit from that. Some people are more deficient. So not that it wouldn't work, just that you could probably do less. You have to be, we're taught to respect the chi of the body. So you don't there was a time when we looked at, like you review cases of somebody doing acupuncture for somebody else, like across the country, but the insurance company wants to make sure that this is actually appropriate. Because they're not familiar with it, they're not sure what these needles are, where they
Right.
are, what they're for. But we would see people using, gosh, it was like 80 to 100 needles on this little old lady who was like in her 70s, and I saw that and I was like, why are they trying to kill that woman? I mean, it's not going to literally kill her, I don't think, but it's just like that is a whole lot of manipulation to the energy of somebody who doesn't have a lot to manipulate. Probably.
Sounds like
I mean, she's been
to,
in a car accident. She's older, so
it's almost like they're putting antennas
technique
in her, trying to charge her up or something. Your poor grandma.
Yeah. I don't know. So we were like, well, it could treat the back pain, but
Right.
I don't know if that many are necessary. But I mean, from their purpose, it doesn't matter. They're not paying by the needle, so it's not like it's just that somebody was doing something, and I was just thinking, did they not learn?
Grandma's feeling a little better, but she gets great reception now. You'd be amazed, right?
I tell people there's a needle that goes in the top of the head. Sometimes I tell people they may be able to hear the radio while they're.
There's a real famous comedian, Bill Engvall, who has a new bit where he talks about getting acupuncture. I'm a big fan of comedians.
Oh gosh, I need to check that out.
Okay, well he talks about using it. I think it was for smoking cessation. And then he's got this whole bit about the needle still being in the top of his head. So is that part of smoking cessation then? Because that's the only reason.
Do you mean like it was left in at the end of the?
Yeah, he. It's a whole funny bit, okay, about him being a complete skeptic about things. And there's a part in it where he lives in California, where his doctor also recommended that he try medicinal marijuana, and he's like, in his 60s. And that whole story had me, I was literally on the floor heaving, laughing, okay? But yeah, I think it was part of like a smoking cessation thing, and he was real skeptical about it. And then so finally he like storms out, but when he went to put his hat on, he didn't realize, because it hurt when he put his hat on. So he pulls his hat off, and the needle was still in the top of his head.
Oh, how funny.
So,
no, that was probably just a mistake. Usually you don't see people wearing needles.
I don't think he's claiming that they messed up. I think it's what he's saying is he like got up and left and didn't realize that he still had it in the top of his head.
Wow.
I'm sorry. That's anyway, down a wormhole here. But you were talking about, putting needles. So my question to you based on that bit was, is there a process even, is he just making this up, or is there a process even inside of acupuncture that helps in things like cessation of addictions of different types?
Oh, sure. I think it was in the 70s. It was developed in New York City, if I'm not mistaken, to combat like opioid addiction. So based on, and what they did was create like a protocol. So they would do the same points for all the same people with the same problem, and they were done in the ear. So that's a big part of the protocol that was then adapted for different things. So they can also like for smoking cessation, like there's a couple different points that help, like I said, to calm the spirit. So that just means to help you calm down and not feel so stressed out. For a lot of people, I mean, that's why they smoke in the first place, is because it's a way of coping with whatever's happening at that time. It helps them kind of move through that stagnation.
Yep.
So you address things that help you feel less stressed, and there are a couple points for that. And then there's one, it's called point zero. It helps the body kind of reset. We think of it as a reset point. And then so you would also do a point for willpower, and then there's a point for the lungs that you would use. It's in the ear though, but probably what he was doing was they probably did the ear acupuncture and then also did some body points as well, because there's other ones, like on the hand there's one, on the toe there's one. And they're more like empirical points, like they're just found for this specific thing. Mostly what we do is particular diagnosis for each individual, but then every now and then there's acupuncture points. It's like, well, this is what it's for, and you can just use it for everybody. It's not going to hurt. Just put it in, and also do your regular diagnosis too. So, but yeah, you can treat smoking cessation, things like people come for weight loss, but the real thing is more, it's like an addiction. It's what is the thing that you're attached to. So it kind of helps you to release the attachments. In most cases, that's why they're coming.
Now, there's a big part of this too, like you were talking about. So what we've really been exploring here together is just sort of the business end of the spear kind of thing. But there's a whole other piece of this too that, like you were talking about, there's an interview process. So this is also sort of connected to a bit of for lack of a better word, I want to call it like therapy, where you get to actually
Hmm.
know the person and try to figure out what are the existential or external forces at play that's
Uh-huh.
also affecting them, right? And so you're sort of hitting this like three legs of the stool. You're sort of hitting the problem all the way around.
Yes, that's true. And a lot of times, especially, I treat migraines a lot. I treat a lot of women and I treat a lot of moms, and probably because that's just what I am. And so those people find me. So
Well,
I treat a lot of
there's
ladies
definitely
who
a
get migraines. And what I'm not going to say in every case, but in many cases, there has been something that happened right before the migraine started. Maybe for one lady, I'll never forget. I treated her, and she had lost so many people in a short amount of time. She didn't even have time to grieve one at a time. Like she just had to keep going because something else would happen. It was like 5 people in less than like 6 months. Her friend, her family members. And then like right after that, migraines. And they just kept getting progressively worse for 20 years. And she came in, and then we would do acupuncture for her for that. And so there are points that you use just to help move the chi, move the blood, build blood as much as you can with needles. And then um, based on what her pulse was doing, whatever I needed to do. But she would see colors during all of her treatment. She would see these different colors. And as we were doing the treatment, she couldn't think of anything because I asked, what was going on, not right away, because people don't really want to tell you all their business right away. But eventually you get to a point where you're like, well, okay, so can you tell me a little bit of background, emotionally, what might have been going on? And she couldn't think of it. And then all of a sudden, after a treatment, maybe a month in, she was like, I just remembered. And then all of this stuff, pum, 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 happened. Bam, here's the migraines, and they just started like down the hill after that. So she got from having probably 5 migraines like a week to, I mean, it was terrible. It was terrible. And then she actually quit her job and moved to Florida.
oh
The
just
acupuncture is transformative.
yeah, I
Actually, it
guess.
can help you. But by the end of it, she wasn't even like a headache a month. Like she was so good, and she stopped seeing colors, and that was really fascinating to me. But I think without coming to understand that emotional part, because then she was able to, she was a counselor, so she had the tools to be able to, look at this grief, or the resources, people that she knows, she could talk to them about it and kind of work through it as she needed to, or journal or whatever helped her to feel better about giving time and space to these different people that she was had gone away. But without that part, I don't think it would have changed, at least not that drastically, because it would have been treated as, well, this is just like some kind of mechanical problem, or you've got some kind of chemical problem, or there's some kind of, here's a pill, let's
Right.
try this, but the pill cannot address the beginning. Sometimes you just have to go back to the beginning.
You
What
know,
was the thing?
it's staggering to me, and I heard this one time that if depression, if you put depression on a scale of like 0, not depressed at all, and 10, like I don't want to be crude, but in the act of ending your life, okay.
Uh-huh.
The best psychotropics and antidepressant medications, if that's 0 to 10, only
Uh-huh.
move a person on that scale half a point.
Wow.
Now, if you are a 10, that half a point is literally the difference between life and death, and that shouldn't be
Right.
discounted, right?
Right.
However, there are a lot of people that are at 4s and 5s too
Yeah.
that just need, or I shouldn't say this because I'm not a doctor and I'm not trying to give advice in that way, right? But I'm saying, like, it's stunning to me how there are things like dietary changes, exercise that move you, already recognize, move you more on that scale
Hmm.
than the best psychotropic medications on the market. Okay. So it's not to say that they don't have a place. And I'm willing to
Right.
bet that because you guys take, same thing here, okay, because you guys take such a whole person approach to diagnosis and treatment, right? I'm willing to
Uh-huh.
bet that that's part of that success equation for you, and I'm willing to bet that it's probably multiple points, if on that scale, because that's what I mean. There's so many other things that you can do that also work and can work in conjunction with these psychotropic drugs, right? However, but it's amazing. I don't know. It was an anecdote, but it was something that was really fascinating to me when you talk about this subject. Is how little those things work, but how important that little bit can also be when it comes to
Yeah.
meds.
Yeah,
But
for sure. For sure. even, I mean, people come with like their chief complaint once they know, sometimes in California it was different when we were interns because people would come, they'd be like, I just don't feel like myself. So they just call it a reset. I just need to reset. And they come and have acupuncture just every 6 weeks just because they feeling kind of, just want to get recharged or whatever. Um, but here, sometimes people still will just come in for like depression. Like they'll be like, I'm just feeling really depressed. And maybe they're already on something or maybe they're not. And they're trying to just feel better to see if they need to go to their doctor. So they'll come in and try it, or they'll come in for grief. I've had a couple of patients come in and they're literally there because their grief is incapacitating them and they can't. They're already in therapy. I'm not taking like the place of a therapist or a psychologist or something, but they're just trying to be able to live their lives. And so usually what I tell them is you'll know when our time is finished because you'll start to feel like you're able to do other things. Like there's a lady I'm seeing, and I asked her, what kind of things do you do to take care of yourself? And like she thought for a while, and then she was like, yeah, I come here. Like that's what she's able to do right now. She comes to see me. So, but we'll get her to a place where she's able to go volunteer or work again, or it's coming. But I think of it as like a bridge to get you from whatever is the thing that's holding you in one spot. And it kind of crosses that gap to help you get to the place where you can walk by yourself again emotionally. I
So
don't focus my practice is not primarily on like emotional things, but it's almost in every person. If they'll tell you, there's always an emotional component because we live in a world with people and things don't go the
yes,
way we would prefer. So
yep.
that's, or the way they should, even not even just our preference, but some things just terrible happen sometimes. So,
No doubt. It's fascinating also to me is that stress is one of these things that kills. I've heard this before. You tell me if you've not, but stress is one of them things that kills more people than like any other thing there is in the world, but in America for sure, in Western societies, and it's almost completely made up in the person's mind. It's not like you can go, oh, you're being attacked by the stress flu bug or you know what I mean? It's something
uh-huh.
that the person decides in a weird sort of way in themselves to participate in, and that boggles my mind because you can see that it's not circumstantial per se because there's people that are very happy that live in places where I wouldn't be. You know what I mean? But
Uh-huh.
why wouldn't I be? I wouldn't be because I'm spoiled rotten, right? I live in the West, whatever. But
Uh-huh.
if you were to take me and airdrop me into like South America, I'd be really, really stressed. But there's people that live there every day and don't have a problem with it.
Right.
You see what I mean? Like, so
Uh-huh.
there's definitely a part of this that is sort of what we do to ourselves. But it's amazing because it actually manifests itself physically. However, like people care, where do you carry stress? Oh, I carry stress in my stomach. I carry stress in my shoulders, or I mean, it physically manifests itself in the physiology of human beings, right? But it's
Uh-huh.
something that's not literally necessarily attacking them externally in any kind of sense per se. It's something that they're resonating with themselves and it's causing all these things to happen. So it makes a direct connection between that sort of brain body, mind body connection and how powerful that really is, right? And then you guys come along and you do things like you see those energies physically manifesting, and then you have a methodology with which literally you stick needles in people and sort of like you were saying, you drain these energies or you do these therapies that cause this stuff to let go, reverse, right? And
Mhm.
that literally is like the same thing is happening in that person's brain at the same time, though, for that to be possible, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't work. You know what I mean? So it's
Mhm.
like weirdly enough, I see a connection in what you do where you are like literally reaching in and flipping switches inside of people's brains and like
Yeah,
making things happen. That's crazy.
I think Ramon actually, because he was an electrical engineer before, and so I think he had an interesting perspective on like electric circuits and the energy of the body. So I mean, I don't know if you ever want to bring that up with him. He could probably, have some insight about that.
Oh,
But
I'm sure.
it is.
Yeah.
It's like because all the channels, if you've ever seen a picture of the human body with all the different acupuncture channels on it, it's just like little roads up and down, and they connect and they cross over, and you can easily imagine when you look at that, like how a problem in one area could create a problem somewhere else. Just like if you're on the interstate and there's a traffic, something's happened up ahead. There's an accident. Somebody's coming off an exit ramp or on an on ramp, and they've caused an accident. Way back here is going to affect you. So maybe back here you're like, oh no, this is terrible, and that's where you're screaming. But the problem is maybe someplace else. So to be able to untangle that
Right.
that kind of mess, it makes a difference. And I read a long time ago before I was in. I think I might have even been before I was a teacher. So I read an article about people who that there's an abdominal massage that they were doing, and the people would go in, and during that massage these memories would come back of like abuse, like terrible things that had happened, but they didn't even know, but the body remembers. And so things that happen to us can go into storage, like literally someplace in the body. Like people will have tender spots and they don't know why. A lot of times on the back there will be a spot that somebody's like, oh, that's really sore, and then I count the spine and the spinous process, and then I figure out which organ does this correspond to. Sometimes it's the heart. Like people who have anxiety, they'll be sore in that spot. Maybe it's muscle, maybe, but maybe, I mean, what a coincidence. It's also where this, this anxiety is manifesting and the heart is affected. They'll have palpitations, tightness in the chest. So it's just a little bit too much of a coincidence for me to think that's all it is.
Right. Oh, no doubt. Have you heard of this whole concept recently? This little sidebar here of the gut brain. Like I'm starting to see more and more about this too, where like, and to your point, now that's so. Not only is that being talked about specifically involving things like gut bacteria and biome and how important this is to, that's just fascinating. That's a whole subject in and of itself. But that you do in fact store memories of things in your body. Period.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because you can see visceral connections between the way people physically react based on those moments being re-exposed or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And with modern technology now, especially with MRIs and all this kind of thing, they can kind of start seeing that there's these connections that we always just thought all this just resided in the big gray, blob between our ears.
Right. Everything's its own section.
But, that makes a lot of sense when you think about that. I heard this one time that in Major League Baseball, for instance, okay, that it's impossible for a batter to hit a Major League Baseball pitch above 90 miles an hour, because by the time the brain actually fires and says swing, right, to the point where he would connect with the batter would connect with the ball, would mean he would have to start swinging or make his decision to swing before the ball ever left the pitcher's hands. By the straight laws of physics. So it's like, what's going on here? Well, what it implies is that there is a sort of consciousness that resides also by itself sort of in the muscle structure and in the body itself. Otherwise, you've got to start like bending the laws of physics to get the signal from the brain to the muscles fast enough for certain things to happen. And martial artists have experienced this kind of stuff for years, where they kind of, I'm going to be, the old Bruce Lee kind of stuff, blindfold me and I'll catch, arrows with my teeth or whatever. It was always taken to like that infinite level. But there's a part of that that's sort of also based in reality where I think that's what they were exploring was there's something that happens through repetition. Musicians experience this a lot for sure, right? I mean, I play guitar, so I don't think about where my fingers are going. I hear the notes and my fingers do it. But it took a long time of repeating those motions and things to make that become, air quotes, second nature. But if that's the case, then that makes a very strong case also for the fact that these kinds of things have to be able to also store memories, because that's how it would know to react, right, to what's happening. Or muscle memory is like a legitimate thing. It's not just getting, the ability to catch a ball really quick or whatever. It's also a place where it stores other memories, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
that's kind of why acupuncture, if you think about it, like a kind of zooming out, I guess, but how acupuncture retrains the body is reminding it how to work like instantly without like the whole process that you're going through right now, which is just like a sluggish movement of energy. I don't know. Somehow it made sense in my head that
no.
not only like muscle memory, but just like training the flow of energy in your body to just respond in a certain way and to be a certain way all the time. And that's how you heal, because your body's taking care of itself. Like you get the pump going again, it can just keep going.
Well, that falls right back on that old saying, you can't fix a problem until you know the problem exists. Okay. So once I think what you're kind of getting at is once you figure out that there's these connections between these things, living a certain way then necessarily means that some of this other stuff just can't happen. Right? So it's a very vertical type thing though, in that it's physical, it's mental, there's a lot of pieces to it, right?
Yeah, and I think that's when stress becomes detrimental, is when there is like an overload in one particular department. So, I mean, I think, but I was talking to my friend about this the other day. Stress as a word is a problem for me because we just say it. I'm
Right.
stressed, right? And it
Right.
sounds like there's a fly on me. Like, okay, maybe it's just a little stress, kind of like a fly, or maybe it's something that is like bogging you down and you can't see through it.
Right.
And I think that happens when there's like an imbalance, because driving in traffic can be stressful, going to your job can be stressful sometimes, or the people that you deal with because they're in your environment can be stressful. But
Yep.
when or your family life or your spiritual or emotional life, whatever, if there's like an overload in one of those departments, like the stress is too much and there's nothing to balance it out, that's when we see things like inflammation happens in the body, and people, they come in with their shoulders up underneath their earlobes because they're just so tight. They don't
Right.
know. They come in because suddenly they can't drive their car. They can't look behind them to see if there's a car back there they're going to hit. But it just builds up over time. And I think it comes from well, I guess you could say that all problems come from an imbalance somewhere. But
Well, and you really got me thinking there. You're right. The word to say just I'm stressed is a really strange form of laziness in a sense. And I'm not saying that to be disparaging to people that are in any way. What I'm saying is the answer is that becomes like this weird catch-all for.
Yeah, it does.
And if you took the time to be more specific, couldn't in there, I'm assuming also lies the answers, does it not? Or the solution.
So. I think so. And I think also because it's similar to how people say, I'm fine. Okay, what does that mean? For one person, I'm fine means that everything is great and my life is perfect right now. I'm fine. This is good. Some people, that mean I'm fine. It means I'm able to survive. My family member is very sick, but I'm keeping it together. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just to say that, what does that even mean? I'm fine. I'm stressed. I'm depressed. Like, there's such a wide,
it's a wide net
gradient.
Yeah.
That it just pulls so much into it, and it makes it hard for people to even like to be respectful for what they actually need, because they're like, well, it could be worse. Sure, yeah, it could be worse, but it could be better, just because some people are in worse pain than you doesn't mean you need to suffer either. Like,
it's very noble or something, right? It's like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah, that's not necessary. Of course it could be worse.
I have this theory. I have this theory that most of the problems we have in life are sort of the metaphysical equivalency of picking up and sticking rocks in your pockets while you're trying to swim. Yeah. And that most human beings, I believe, are just naturally, for continue the paraphrasing here, buoyant. And we are not, because of the rocks we stick in our pockets. And that just makes us have to swim harder and harder and harder to try to stay afloat, right? So the trick is not to learn how to swim harder. The trick is to get the damn rocks out of your pockets, man. You know, and and then it all becomes very simple. I get this a lot, right? Because you'd ask me, how I was doing. I said, I'm living the dream. When I say that, I'm not joking.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sincere. There's not a day of my life that is not just fascinating and amazing to me anymore, where it's just, I really do, enjoy life I hope at its fullest potential, and I'm very happy, right? But it was that epiphany. It was like, all I got to do is get these rocks out of my pockets, man, which just get the crap off of you. And just do that and watch what happens, stop swimming so hard, man. You don't have to, kind of thing.
And I think that's the bridge. I think that acupuncture helps people.
Yeah.
People come when they're stuck, and they can't even, like, to some people you can say that and they'll be like, what? Like, they can't even begin to process it.
Right.
But you just get their energy moving a little bit, and then they're like, I really don't need, or this lady, I really do just need to Florida because that's where I'm happy. Like, right.
Go to your happy
place.
Do
it. You can do it. Make yourself happy.
Yeah, I don't understand this need for. It's like this weird sort of self. I don't know what you call it, like sadism, self sadism, that you would stay doing something or continue doing something that makes you miserable. And it's like, why don't people don't understand? It's okay. You don't have to do that anymore if you don't want. Like, wake up.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the big realizations that almost everybody has to have is like
Right.
you have agency. I mean, most people, some people, I mean, of course, there are extenuating circumstances and people with different levels of ability and all this kind of stuff maybe being taken advantage of. But for most people, that you have agency and you can decide
Yeah.
that it doesn't have to be this way. But to realize that you have that power and not to be afraid to take it, that's a big deal. I think that's one of the realizations of like adulthood is, and for some people it comes way much later. And
Yeah. Yes, it does. I'm
if
telling
it
you,
comes at all, if it comes at all.
it's amazing to me, right? That when you do have that, like you have that literal conversation with someone and just watch them go, wait, I can? It's like, hello? Like,
Yeah, you get to give yourself permission, but we don't always
right.
realize that.
Yeah, it's kind of up to you. Do what you want,
Yeah.
you know? Are you hurting anyone? No? Okay, have a ball, man. I don't, you're free, or you can, make a choice. All right, so how does somebody get here what's the path that brings you to sort of deciding that this is the way you want to interact with and make your living with the world? Both, from jamming steel needles into people, but the whole just the whole the whole, because you're into you've decided to get into something where your job is kind of helping people and in many different ways. So what leads you to that?
Well, my story is, a lot of people get into acupuncture because they've had it done for their animals and they're like really impressed and they want to be able to do that for people. But for me, I guess I always wanted to help people because I started out in undergrad to be a teacher. So I went to school for elementary education and then graduated, in Kentucky, you have to do a K-tip portfolio. You do this whole big ordeal where you keep records of everything, do extra stuff, have a mentor who helps you do all this stuff and get, people come and look at you. So it's kind of like a big thing. And then I did 1 year of teaching while I was doing that. And I actually, in October, I was like, well, that's enough of this. I am going to not want to retire from teaching. So, I finished out the year, but I knew I was like, well,
Not
okay,
for me,
we tried and that is not going to be the thing for me. So, so there was that, but I had grown up. My dad was a martial arts instructor and he made me get my black belt before I could get my driver's license. So I did that and I grew up with these posters in his office of basically the acupuncture points, except for instead of here's where you put the needles, it's like, okay, so punch him here and he'll pee on himself. Like all these different
pressure
uses
points
of
stuff,
the body, but same idea. And I thought, how fascinating, how interesting that you could touch somebody here and it will have an effect somewhere else. So that was always ruminating and fascinating, even though I didn't understand it. And so when teaching turned out to be not for me, or I wasn't for it, I don't know. I found it. I am glad that there are people who enjoy teaching and can do it because I'm not one of them, but they're very important. But I didn't have the classroom control and all this kind of stuff. I was also not a mother, so maybe now it would be different. I don't know, but anyway, I think it all worked out for the good. And we were already married. We were already married at that time. And then he was an electrical engineer and he had already been like, well, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. So we both at the same time were kind of like at this crossroads of, okay, well, we're young and we already know we don't, because this is going to just be a path of misery. When you know. So there's no reason to continue into that. And we had a friend who was an acupuncturist and he would fly back and forth from San Diego to Lexington and do acupuncture here once a month or something. So we met with him one time at his clinic and looked at some of his books and he encouraged us to go just check out the school and see what we thought. So we went out to San Diego and looked at PCOM and then just kind of like you do maybe when you're young and wild and do whatever you want, we just packed it up and moved across the country.
Isn't it great though, having that ability when you can just be like, screw it, throw it all away, start over, right? No.
Yeah, we're like, okay, let's just try this. So we roll in there. It's like New Year's Eve, and I didn't actually have acupuncture until I was already in school for an entire semester and starting on my second semester. And then I began to develop these nosebleeds that would not stop, but for no apparent reason, right? Obviously now I'm like, oh my God, of course there was a reason, everything, but at the time it was like, it's not dry in here.
Right.
I've not had a nose injury. There's nothing I can pinpoint. So I went to have acupuncture. And he did these. I had some other problems that were going on at the same time, but they were all in line with the same diagnosis. They would seem to somebody looking from the outside, it would be like, that's a bunch of random stuff. I'm sorry, your life is so chaotic. But it was all the same, like one basic diagnosis with all these random things causing me anguish to one degree or another. So then I had acupuncture and it worked really great. And I took herbs and I was like, okay, this is good. So then we just kept going. So it just a little bit wild in the beginning, but it comes from the urge to be of use for me because I'm a pretty practical person and I like to have a purpose and know what's up. So
It's fulfilling. Sure. Yeah.
it is. Yeah, it's good work. And I tell people now, at least, nobody hides from me under the table like my little reading students used to. And they come in one at a time instead of like 30 at a time. So it's much better for me personally and my personality.
Yeah, you got better odds for sure.
For sure. Yeah. So it's still, you feel good. And to be able to help people in all kinds of different ways, because it all makes an impact. And that's the nice thing you can see. I mean, being able to look behind you when you're driving, that's a safety issue. So you feel like you've helped somebody when they can do that, when they go to leave your clinic and they couldn't before. Or somebody who's, crossing this immense, just a desert of grief right now, when finally they can see grass. Like, you can see these changes happen for people and you feel like you're helping somebody's life to be better. So it's fulfilling work. Frustrating sometimes because it's can be very mysterious. Things get all tangled up and you have to like crack the case. But I grew up reading Nancy Drew and Harriet the Spy and Sherlock Holmes, so I've got that like natural detective
desire,
curiosity anyway. Yep. So
wanting to figure out things, help people figure out things in themselves is super rewarding, right? It's especially when you get to see that physical. I guess it's funny because when you do your job the best, you get rid of a customer. Like it's
exactly.
It's that's kind of an interesting dynamic, right? That you guys have to kind of deal with this, that because your goal is to make it so that person doesn't need you anymore.
It's true. I always, people come for a reason, and then we find out like, what else do you want? So if they're interested in like general health, then they'll schedule, like I said, every 6 weeks they'll just come in, or they know, like I'll inform them, like, if here's a list of things, if this happens, come and see me, I can help you. And so they'll know that because they've had results in other ways, like they'll try it for other things, even if it's, or especially if it's like random things, like suddenly they can't smell, or now they have this ringing in their ears and they, the doctor said, sleep with a fan on, like we can't fix it. So that's just going to be your life. They'll come in and give acupuncture a try, or they'll tell their friends. So that's kind of how, but my goal is always to get people to the point where they can, like, not only they can take care of themselves, but like their bodies can take care of themselves. So I see myself more as like a facilitator. I don't think of myself as like a healer, which some people do. I think of myself as like a facilitator that helps things get going. But I'm able to see from the outside and have access to this very old medicine that's been working for a really long time, and to be able to apply that to someone with compassion and I hope some degree of skill, so that then they can basically run themselves.
Right.
And then know that if they need this again, we're here.
Now, how long have you guys been doing this? I mean, when you said you were talking about how you went to San Diego and these kinds of things, but that was a while ago. That was pre-kids and all kinds of stuff ago.
Yeah,
right?
What year was it? 9, 10, 11. I do it based on the kids' ages. So 11 years ago, we moved out to San Diego.
Okay.
We moved out there 11 years ago, and then 2 years in. So for 9 years, we've been. We started out like in the clinic, like intern, having your own patients and treating people under supervision. And then we've had our practice here for 7 years in Lexington. And then Berea, we started, I think, 6 years ago.
Well, 7 years, I mean, that's like now you're in your golden, that's when things really start to take off. Generally, when it comes to businesses, is like once you get past that, 5 is a big benchmark, 2 is a big benchmark, right? 5 and 7 are big benchmarks in business careers. So like that's well, you guys will be retiring from that. That's what it looks like, at this point, right? I'm really fascinated, especially now, how we're seeing this convergence between Eastern and Western medicines, where I think there was a major hospital that's literally building an entire division now where they're exploring more the Eastern medicines and given that more space as like you guys already do, which is like a holistic or whole body sort of approach to healing and stuff. So This is something that, when you guys started doing, because it's rapid, the opinions of this kind of stuff has rapidly changed in even the last 7 years. You must have seen a big swing.
Yeah, there's, especially recently because of the opioid crisis, there's a big push
sure.
for other options, especially in the beginning. So when people come to doctors for things like back pain or neck pain, like the VA, we work with the VA, instead of immediately here's a pill for you. And even like patients too are hesitant. They don't, because they know, like, it's all in the news. They don't want to start on a path that could become addictive for them. If
Sure.
there's some other way, they want some other way. And so I think it's the Mayo Clinic that has the acupuncture, and they also have actually one of the dispensaries we use for herbs. They carry herbs, like they work with them to do herbal formulas, and that's just amazing. There are other hospitals, like there was one in, I think it was in Pittsburgh, that they have acupuncture in the emergency department. I saw on a news show. And then even in San Diego, Rady's Children's Hospital, I did a shift there as an intern, and we would see people we would go to the oncology ward of the Children's Hospital and help people who were dealing, like if they'd had surgery and they have pain, or if they're doing chemo, like to help them just get through that process better. And then also people would come to like an outpatient clinic. A lot of times it was young ladies with migraines at that clinic, like for intractable pain. So the things that they've tried haven't worked, and they would kind of send them to us as like just try this and see if that can help. So we got to work inside of Rady's Children's Hospital doing that as well. And I thought that was really remarkable. And I'm glad to see it spreading. And I'm sure there's more, popping up all over the country, but it's nice to see that as an option at the places where people are going too. They come in for emergency, but maybe we can help you without a very invasive procedure. So
my grandmother would say, if you went to her and said, "Oh, Grandma, I've been feeling right lately," her first recommendations would always be the same thing. It would be, well, eat better, get more sleep, and get outside and exercise more and see how you feel, right?
Yeah, she's not wrong, I don't think.
And I swear you could make a bloody fortune just reaffirming that to people, because it's like this weird sort of horse sense, right? But, it's one of the things that's like, yeah, duh, Grandma, I get it. And you know what's funny is when you do it, it works. It works I mean, it may not fix everything that's bugging you, but you'll feel better, period.
Yeah.
It just sort of
especially in the beginning, if you start right away.
Yeah. But there's, when she would say things to you like eat better. Okay. Well, that's a big subject just in and of itself. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Get outside and exercise more. What does that mean? Like, are we talking long distance running, Grandma? Are we triathloning? Go for a walk? Well, like that. And I think people get sort of this weird sense of, I think people know what they're supposed to be doing, but there's too many options in that.
Yeah.
Or it seems so overwhelming, or it's like working out was one of them things. It's like, you don't need weights, gym membership. You don't need any of that stuff. If all you want to do is start moving more, start there and see what happens.
Go on a walk, go out the door.
And so it's like this. So instead of doing something, it's like analysis paralysis, and people just sort of do nothing instead, because they can't figure it out, or it's just too much to consider, so they can't figure it out, right? So then along comes this place for these practices that are ancient, but they all sort of address those exact same horse sense kind of ideologies. And now now that we're starting to respect that, hey, by the way, that stuff was important, really important. And then boom, here comes this necessity for it. And then you guys sort of drop very neatly right into that space as a wellness giver, for sure.
Yeah.
And sort of make up that slack that's beside this really critical clinical side in the regular Western medicine, and then where human beings really are. There's this chasm in the middle that's sort of missing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, all right. So we asked you about how you got there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we want to catch up with you on. We're coming up on about an hour.
Okay.
Oh, you know what we need to talk about? We need to talk about Blue Lotus Health and Acupuncture. So let's talk about how people find you, and any of the things that they can catch you involved in, and this kind of stuff. So
my fifth baby, that's what I call it, the fifth child, because it's our business.
The business, right? Yeah, sure.
We are our location in Lexington. We're 1200 Versailles Road in Lexington, and then in Berea, this is both Kentucky. We're at 122 Main Street, which is right above the Berea Coffee and Tea. And we have a Facebook page, and we have a website. It's bluelotushealth.com. I have an Instagram account. I'm very bad at Instagram, but there is one. I keep forgetting to go over there and do stuff.
I've been using that for some reason because I've been connecting Ramon to it. So
you can. I mean, I think it's like Blue Lotus Health, so it makes sense that it would be connected.
Yes. Yep.
So I think he has like a Twitter,
right?
For like Shafusi, and so that's primarily with you can call, you can schedule online, whatever you want to do. We have people who answer the phones while we're with patients, so usually you're able to get a hold of somebody.
All right, so they can just give you a shout, set up an appointment, come in and check out what's going on there. I mean, is there any? You guys don't have like a YouTube channel or anything like that, do you yet? I think sure.
I don't. We don't have like a Blue Lotus YouTube account. I have done some videos that I just posted onto our Facebook page. Like, there's one of him doing like a Tai Chi form at an open house we had one time. There's one of there's a couple. Sometimes I just get inspired, especially when it comes to treating children, because I think it's interesting to interview my children after I've treated them because they're just going to tell me what they feel, they're just going to say it. So sometimes I'll interview them and put that on there. Or if I've got like a helpful hint that I think suddenly it occurs to me, people don't know this. Because one of the problems is you know a lot of things after you've been in school for 4.5 years for this. And you start to assume, well, everybody knows that. Right. So I should start a level above, but that's not true. So once I realize that's a thing that nobody knows, I need to make sure they know, then I'll do a video. So some videos are there on the Blue Lotus Health and Acupuncture Facebook page.
Very cool. I think that's it. I mean, can you think of anything else we need to cover?
Yeah, I would just recommend, if you're interested in the history, one of the original works of Chinese medicine is called the Huangdi Neijing. It's Huang is the Huang, and then Di, or if you just type in Yellow Emperor, it'll come up because that's what it means.
Okay.
It's like a conversation. So if you can read some more stuff for anybody who's listening, it's an interesting read.
Yeah, I think Ramon references and Jeff Cody references that a lot as well.
Yeah.
So this is an important, this is sort of a fundamental work then that's kind of. What am I saying? Is,
like a foundational.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I was looking for it. I couldn't find it. It was right there on the end of my tongue. So. All right. Well, cool. You've been an absolute joy. This has been great. I think we should, think about doing this some other time too. Maybe we can get you in on some other topics, especially when it comes to holistic medicine. Sure. I think it would be fun possibly to get you and Jeff Cody's wife. Her name is completely, and she's going to kill me because she's actually a really good friend of mine, and I can't think of her name right now. But anyway, because I got too much stuff going on in my brain. Yeah. Susan Cody, for crying out loud, who's also a pharmaceutic.
You got it. That's good. You got it.
Oh, okay. I can breathe.
That's a close one.
Love you, Susan. But I think it'd be kind of neat to get you guys on for just a general conversation between the two of you, because both of you have both being women, mothers, so on and so forth, but also being practitioners for health and wellness with people but different schools would be kind of an interesting thing to see the similarities and stuff between the practices and that kind of thing. So, but anyway, I'll throw that out to Susan. Sure. But anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. Check us out at www.noshitcast.com. It's KNOWSHITCAST.com. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons. Leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure you give us a rating on iTunes, etc. If you like what we do, please give us a share. It'd be greatly appreciated, and we will catch you all next time. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bicycles. That's kind of how we do it.